Well, listeners, in case you didn't get enough sports today, here's an ad break that'll tell you how to watch even more sports. YouTube is the new home of NFL Sunday Ticket. And if you sign up now, you'll get our lowest full season price of the year. Just go to youtube.com/presale to get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. Watch your favorite teams out-of-market Sunday afternoon games, exclusively on YouTube and YouTube TV. All right, enough about sports. Go get more sports. Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends June 6th. No refunds.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines with comments from key guests in the college and high school NIL space.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Just like that, the NFL draft is in the books. It's like we were literally talking about Miles Murphy yesterday, 2 days ago technically, but it really doesn't feel like 2 days. I mean, just the way times fly is crazy. But here we are. The draft is in the books. The Bengals get 8 picks out of it, and we are here to break it all down for you and what it means moving forward into the rest of the offseason with about 2 weeks before rookie minicamp. Welcome into the final post-draft edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Mohammad Ahmad and Andrew Gillis here with you to wrap up day 3 of the NFL draft. And before we get into that, I forgot to mention this yesterday, so I want to say it now. Make sure you sign up for Cincinnati Football Insider. It's our subtext service. We send you all the breaking news, analysis, and updates, including everything that was going on with the draft, what the Bengals were doing with their picks, and why those picks mattered. Me, Mike, and Andrew are all over it. And if you want to sign up, go to cleveland.com/Bengals. Click on the blue banner at the top of the page to sign up. It's $4.99 a month, but it's a 2-week free trial to start, and you're not going to want to quit because once you get on it, you're going to get hooked because who doesn't want to get hooked on the cool kids? So make sure you sign up. And if you want more news and updates, go to cleveland.com/newsletters and sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter. It's free. It's in your inbox every morning, and you get the best stories and insights from me, Mike, and Andrew. All right, without further ado, jumping into it just to go through the names here. So day 3, the Bengals get Charlie Jones, wide receiver out of Purdue, running back Chase Brown out of Illinois in the 5th round. I think I'm gonna say his name wrong. Correct me if I say it wrong, guys. In the 6th round, the Bengals got Andre Iosivas. Is it Iosivas or Iosivas? Forget. It's one of those two.
I forget.
It's spelled Iosivas. That's how it's spelled, but I know it's not pronounced like that. But nonetheless, they get him out of Princeton. Iosivas. There you go. Yoshivas. They get him from Princeton in the 6th round. A few picks later, they got punter Brad Robbins from Michigan. That's a pick they got from the Chiefs after trading down in the 3rd round on Friday. And they top it off, last but not least, with Miami cornerback DJ Ivey with pick 246. So obviously, as we expected, they did a little more offense today with a wide receiver and a running back. I think I was a little interested, though, the fact that, and we'll talk more about this, later in the podcast, but I thought once they got to the 6th round, they were going to get a tight end. Instead, they double up at wide receiver with Yoshivas, as we mentioned. I like the pick with Robbins. I think with Ivy at that point, those 7th round picks tend to be crapshoots, so really not much there. But I don't know. Do you guys think they should have made a move at tight end in the 6th round, or do you think Yoshivas really was worth, that 6th round pick after they already got a wide receiver with Charlie Jones?
Yeah, I think, kind of when you look at it, I think you can actually be okay with not drafting a tight end. I understand kind of the need. Hey, look, we only have, Irv Smith and Drew Sample and Devin Asiasi, and, we didn't really use Asiasi a lot, and Sample was injured, and Irv Smith is coming into a new team. Like, I get all that, but this is a predominantly 11 personnel team. You do not really do a lot of 2 tight end sets, and frankly, I think you're kind of just leaning into what you do well. Because if Irv Smith is good, and I mean the talk from and I mean good in Cincinnati. The talk from everybody for the last few weeks has been, oh, the Bengals have this great marketing pitch for tight ends, come to Cincinnati and you're going to get paid after 1 year. Like, that's fine. Like, if that's the case, then you need to roll with this, I think. I understand kind of wanting an extra tight end, but you're taking away time from somebody else, because if you really do believe in Irv Smith, then you have to take him off the field for a rookie tight end. And rookie tight ends, they take a while, so kind of once you get past Mayer and Kincaid, there's really not a tight end that you could look at and say immediately pro ready. Like, immediately we're going to use this guy and immediately he's going to be an impact playmaker. So I don't know that we'll get into kind of other positions here and kind of what I think, but I think with tight end, everybody was kind of talking about that as a big need. I'm okay with it. I don't think it's that big of a deal that they passed on tight end again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we talked about it last night. I would have taken, one of those top tight ends. And once you pass with those, I mean, it's sort of, I don't know, became less relevant as the draft went on. I do disagree with Andrew. I think that whole group of 5 or 6 guys would have been ready to contribute. Luke Shoemaker from Michigan was a 5-6 year player. Sam Laporta was a 4-year player at Iowa. I mean, I think those guys would have been ready to step in and not had any issues. And all those guys were sort of physically imposing. So, would have been able to sort of take the rigors of the game. But I didn't, in terms of day 2, that wasn't really my issue with how day 2 went for them.
Yeah, I think, and obviously we'll see if they get any undrafted free agents, which are all coming in right now as we speak, but haven't seen a tight end reported yet. Obviously that could change in the next 24 plus hours. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Zach Taylor, I think he was serious when he said he genuinely believed in, Irv Smith, Drew Sample, Devin Asiasi, and of course they have the 2 tight ends in the practice squad, Nick Bowers, and I believe the other one's name is Tanner Hudson. So, they want to see what they can get out of those guys, and the other 3 guys on the active roster I mentioned, and then maybe like with Mitch Wilcox being gone, do you get someone like him who was an undrafted free agent just like him, who maybe gets on the practice squad and competes for a starting role like he did for the last 3 years? I don't know. I think they could have made a move in that round, but to kind of bounce off what Andrew said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And I say that specifically because I think with Yoshivas, I mean, I'm looking at his RAS score right now. For those who don't know, it's relative athletic score. So his overall score was a 9.96 out of a possible 10.0, which ranked him 14th out of just about over 3,000 wide receivers. I mean, his height, his bench, his vertical, broad jump, 4.43 40-yard dash, which I think sticks out the most. The way Troy Walters talked about him was almost like he's a lottery pick if you can really unlock that potential and, get him to learn how to run routes and use him on special teams for a year, because obviously he's not going to come in and play right away.
It wasn't lottery pick. It was lottery ticket. That he has a
lottery ticket. Okay, thank you. Lottery ticket.
Lottery pick means like the high picks in the NBA draft.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're in the NFL, not the NBA. Thanks for the clarification. But the point I'm making is obviously they really believe in this guy. I don't think they just looked at him as somebody they could dump on special teams for depth. It's going to be the case for now, but I think they really believe, depending on what happens with Tyler Boyd's contract after next year and Trenton Irwin and Stanley Morgan, who are the other backups, seems like they really believe in this guy. I mean, do you think maybe they might have snuck something out with this guy, or do you think, he's just a 6th-round pick? Every coach is going to say that about a player like that. Or do you think there's really something there?
I thought it was a strange pick. They talked about during the week they don't take developmental players, but he's clearly a developmental player. Didn't play football yearly throughout his whole entire college career. Is going to be behind the 8 ball in terms of A, the competition phase, because he played at Princeton, and B, football was sort of his second sport for much of his time. As an athlete. And so, I guess you could say he has a high upside, but he also has, pretty significant risk. In terms of, he's probably the riskiest pick they made. At a position where they picked a player that has similar sort of, where they want him to contribute in Charlie Jones, to double up at receiver. I don't understand it. I mean, it is the end of the 6th round, or, towards the end of the 6th round. So, who are you going to get there? besides him. But I just thought it was a strange swing for them to make. They've got two guys on the roster that sort of fit that bill. So obviously there won't be room for all these guys come week one, but didn't really understand that pick as much. I get their point of why it has upside, because of his athletic numbers, but at the same time, that's a long way to go to translate that into a consistent football career.
What do you think, Andrew? Are you kind of torn on that, or do you agree with Mike on that?
No, I actually kind of think you needed to double dip at receiver. I understand that, people really like Trent Taylor, people really like Trenton Irwin, but it's kind of the fact of the matter. This got brought up in the press conference today. I think it was the pick after. I think it was the Charlie Jones pick. Tyler Boyd got hurt in the AFC Championship
it was in that conference
last year. And you could start to see kind of the unraveling of the wide receiver room. And kind of behind that, you don't really have an option that is an outside receiver because, Charlie Jones isn't that big. He's kind of your slot guy. And then you don't, with Taylor and Irwin, you don't have a guy who can go get the ball if Jamar or T goes down and, you're kind of moving guys all around. So, I actually thought the pick was fine. I think with that, he has to come in. He's going to be the fifth or the sixth receiver in 25 or 23. He's going to be a special teams depth guy. But if you can, I'm okay with that kind of pick late because if you can turn him into a fourth receiver, a third receiver, if, at the end of the year, Tyler Boyd leaves in free agency and you re-sign T. Higgins, you're going to need a cheap free agent or a cheap wide receiver room because you're not really going to have a lot of money to go after free agents. So you need, a wide receiver room that's young, that's cheap, and that has upside. And I'm okay with that as an upside pick. I think once you get to that part of the draft, you're not really going to find a lot of guys who, this guy's going to come in and definitely be a solid backup for sure, maybe a starter. Like you're drafting guys who, okay, maybe he's injured. I mean, this guy's coming from a small school and he's got upside. I just think when you get to that point in the draft, it's kind of hard to draft a certainty. So I'm okay with it. I think that's kind of the pick that you need to make there in the 6th round.
Yeah, we mentioned Charlie Jones. I almost forgot about him. I didn't mean to gloss over him, but I just thought the Yoshivas pick was interesting. Yeah, I think Jones, kind of how you feel about Yoshivas is how I feel about Jones. I think that's actually a good pick. I initially questioned that at first of 4th round wide receiver. Did they need one that soon? But, you kind of hear, Brian Callahan and Troy Walters talk about it. Like he played in a pro style offense with Jeff Brom at Purdue, which that right there shows you, the discrepancy between playing in college. The NFL is not going to be that big for him, especially on top of the fact he played in the Big Ten. So you have that, which is a bonus. And I also think too, this is the big thing. Like you mentioned, Andrew, yeah, people like Trent Taylor, but they also acknowledge he can come in and compete for that punt return role because Darren Simmons said at the NFL Combine that, they could have gone a little more out of Trent. The goal is to always give the ball back to the referee. That wasn't always the case. So do they get something better with that when it comes to Jones? I don't know. We'll see. And that's kind of where training camp will determine that. But yeah, I mean, depending on what happens to Tyler Boyd, that could be your guy right there. A cheap option on a rookie contract. He played inside. He played outside, although he mostly played outside. Obviously, the Bengals would use him inside. I like that. But also when I get to the other offensive pick, and that's Chase Brown, I mean, really at this point, it's going to be Brown, Travion Williams, or Chris Evans competing for Samaje Perine's job. Really, I think it narrows down, honestly, to Brown and Williams. I mean, I think we've talked about Chris Evans really a bunch on this podcast. I mean, he's just there. I don't think they're very fond of him. Just not fond of him in terms of as a person, but just with the way he played. He was inactive 4 of the last 6 games of the season because of some penalties and his inability to kind of run as a receiver. So I think it's going to come down to those two. I mean, what are your all's impressions of Brown? Obviously, it looks like they liked his patience and his vision, when he cuts upfield, when he finds an open hole. Do you think that's going to be an interesting competition to watch with him and Travion Williams in training camp?
I don't know if it's a competition between he and Travion Williams. I think, you have, I mean, they're bringing in some undrafted free agent guys as we speak,
right.
But it's kind of
that's right.
On those guys. Frankly, I think it's going to be, you kind of have 2 competitions to monitor here. I think it's going to be Joe Mixon versus Chase Brown, and it's going to be Travion Williams versus Chris Evans. The first two guys you would assume are pretty safe. Zach Taylor said that, Joe Mixon was the starting running back today. And, obviously he's going to say that. They didn't really make a significant move in terms of adding him. Zach's exact quote was, his future's here with the team. I like Joe Mixon. He said later that, he liked Joe as the starter. They get him a ball in a lot of different ways, but he can't take all of the reps. So, yeah, they can say that they're high on Travion Williams, but, one of the questions I got asked to them, which I thought was a good point, was, a lot of times at the running back position, you look at guys and say, okay, well, mileage is a bad thing. And I think, one of the other reporters, James Rapine, brought this up. Hey, look, this is the one position where, experience is kind of viewed as a bad thing. One of the reasons I really like Israel Abanikanda was because he didn't have a lot of touches. And, you're talking about a guy who has 676 college carries. I think part of that, if I can read between the lines, is that you want a guy who can come in and kind of play and has, a pretty wide net of college experience. He was playing at Illinois significantly since 2020. He had 3 years. In 2022, he had a lot of carries. He had 328. So you're talking about a guy who's really experienced. I don't think that this is, a 5, 6, 7 year answer, but I do think it could be a 2023 answer, because you're talking about, probably one of the more experienced running backs that you could find. And, I think those two guys are going to be competing for touches at the top of the depth chart. Pass blocking is going to be big out of Chase Brown. If he can show that he can block out of the backfield, that's going to be a really, really nice feather in his cap. And then you got the last two guys, Travion and Chris Evans. It sounds like Travion kind of has a significant lead there, but I think those two guys are kind of competing for that third down special teams type role. But yeah, I think that there's two kind of battles to watch in the backfield. And I'm not really sure that you can put Chase Brown and Travion in the same ballpark, because I'm not sure that that's the case.
Yeah, I tend to disagree. Because I thought it was a bit, you're drafting a running back that his feature, so he's a 3-down back in production and needs the ball to sort of rack up the yards, and you're not going to have him do that. They need a 3rd-down back or a change of pace option to fit in this roster. They didn't go that way. I guess Zach can always take back his comments that he meant he liked Joe Mixon for now, but there was no ... after the end of that sentence. I think he's their starting running back. To me, it didn't make much sense in terms of what the need on the roster was for next year, knowing that it looks like they're going to keep Mixon. I would say, he did have gaudy production, but the Illinois schedule was just dreadful last year, but really, really bad. And the year before that, more than half of his yards came in 2 games, and one of them was against Charlotte. So, yes, he has produced, but I don't know. I think I take that production with a little bit of a grain of salt in terms of, some of the teams that he was putting up these yards against were not very good defenses.
Yeah, I get that. I just think that, he's not the home run threat. He's not the guy who's going to break a long one. He does have 4.43 speed, which is pretty good for a guy who's 5'9" and 210 pounds. But I just think that
his success comes from wearing a defense down.
Right.
Look at his 41 carries against Minnesota, 31 against Iowa, 32. That's not even in the realm of possibility at the NFL level right now. That he'll get those carries. Maybe he could handle them, but they're not suddenly going to do that. And so I'm not sure what his value was. I don't dislike that pick in that range. I don't think it's taking a guy early or taking a guy that didn't fit, that spot. But I just don't necessarily understand the fit for the Bengals.
Yeah, and I guess if you had I think kind of if I could take a guess at it, I think what they're trying to do is, or at least they're banking on the offensive line being better. Sometimes last year you would kind of need Samaje in the backfield, especially as kind of the injuries started to rack up. You just need it. I think, Samaje played a lot of snaps in that AFC title game when the offensive line was kind of banged up. So I think they're kind of banking on that offensive line being improved and you not kind of needing that back to kind of help out in protection on third downs. And I think that's where Travion can come in because Travion does have some speed to him. So I think you're kind of looking at Chase Brown and Joe and kind of that first and second down role. And if I had to guess, I think Travion's going to be the third down back. I'm not saying that, that's what they should have done or the best case scenario, but I just think that that's kind of what they're going to do.
Yeah, like I'm kind of with Mike on the point he made. Like there was no ... after they talked about Mixon, so I think that's really where they stand on that. But yeah, I don't know. We'll just kind of see what happens there. But stay with us when we come back. We're going to talk about the one other pick I didn't mention, Brad Robbins, the punter from Michigan, because there's something interesting to mention with him. Plus, we're going to put a bow on this year's draft class and see where things stand going into the future of the offseason. But stay with us. We'll be right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. And thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So, guys, we talked about Andre Yoshivas, Chase Brown, really with DJ Ivey. I think there's not much to say other than he'll be a depth piece behind Cam Taylor-Britt and Chidobe Awuzie. But and then, of course, Charlie Jones. But Brad Robbins, 6th-round punter. First of all, do you guys even agree with drafting a punter? I know, Andrew, I think you're very against drafting a punter, but did you agree with drafting a punter when they had that pick? And Mike, what do you think of that?
No, I don't think they needed to draft a punter because I think you can kind of look at some of the picks that were around that, and yeah, you're not talking about a guy who can come in and immediately start for you. I don't think that that's the case at all. But you pick him with the last pick in the 7th round, and I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to, right there, you could have taken one of your tight ends. You could have taken Zach Kuntz. You could have taken the running back Dwayne McBride out of UAB. You could have given yourself kind of something there. I kind of made the case for Andrew Voorhees, who the Ravens actually traded up and got. Is kind of a development red shirt type guy where you just throw him on the pup and you put him on IR and you say see you in 24. I think that there were better options there. Of the punters that they could have got, I think you need one, obviously. I think it's pretty clear that Drew Chrisman's play kind of just slowly went downhill as the year went along. Obviously, and then the AFC Championship game, that punt kind of sits in everybody's craw just because of how that game ended. And the punt that kind of led and kind of started everything off on that final drive for the Chiefs. So, yeah, I mean, you needed a punter for sure. I'm not saying you didn't. I don't know. I don't think you could have. I'm just not in favor of drafting a punter. I think that, resources can kind of go elsewhere and you can figure something out.
Evan McPherson would like to have a word with you.
Well, that's fine. But, Justin Tucker was an undrafted free agent too. Really good kickers can go undrafted.
Only one punter went after that, and it was Ethan Evans from Wingate. I think Simmons alluded to that was the other guy that they sort of had on their board. Obviously, I think Drew Chrisman's days are numbered based on the pick. I disagree that I would expect Brad Robbins to be the starter, when this year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Based on them using that resource and just based on Simmons' comments that they were essentially just didn't get any hang time this year. It killed them, and that's not good. And this guy can hold. So, unless he comes in and, poops the bed, I just don't think that there would be anything holding back from him playing this year. I mean, they had a guy that had no experience last year step in midway through the season. What would stop Robbins from getting the job right at fall camp? And they tied the resources to it, so it would benefit them to do it.
Right. Yeah. This to
agree.
me this signals to me a kind of a move of, even if it's even at all close, which I guess would not be great in training camp if you're the Bengals.
Yeah.
If it's even at all close, you have to still kind of side with the kid that you drafted. So, I mean, you that to me, just the investment there. I know that's not necessarily always the best way to do business, but you drafted Robbins, you have to put him on the roster at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost think unless like you said, if he poops the bed, then okay, we're having a different talk in July. But yeah, I'm with you there. And I mean, there's a point he made about the hang time. He harped on that because the punt that Andrew mentioned with the AFC Championship, he said the way that was punted, you can get away with that in college, but as we saw in that game, you can't get away with that as easily in the NFL. So that was a very big deal with Robin's hang time, which I think, I don't have the numbers off the top of my hand, but it was one of the best, I think, in the country last year at Michigan. I think I saw something that said he didn't have a single touchback. Don't quote me on that. I think
he did not have a single touchback.
That's right. Yeah, I think the Bengals tweeted that initially, and I didn't double check it, so I wanted to make sure. But not a single touchback, good hang time, and this, I had to hold my laughter back when he was talking about this. When we talked to Brad Robbins on the phone, because he played soccer as a kid, right? Most kickers play soccer, strong leg. I guess he was a striker, and he said he would kick the ball so hard he would make kids cry if the ball hit them. And I was just like, yeah, God bless that guy with a leg. But like, has anyone ever made you guys cry, by the way, like playing basketball, football? Like, anyone made you cry? Like, even unintentionally, obviously. Like, anybody ever do that to you?
No.
Don't like to disclose that?
No.
I got hit by a pitch once, and it made me cry when I was 12. I think it was it hit me like near my rib cage. But I was 12, so I mean it was probably like maybe a 60.
Maybe you should just not be a baby, Mohammad. Maybe you should just suck it up.
Yeah, maybe I should. Maybe there's a reason why I'm talking about sports and not playing them. But no, in all seriousness, I think all of what you guys said makes sense. Just to kind of put it all together, we've talked about the draft picks from today, and the last 2 days we've talked about Myles Murphy, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle. So I'm just going to put you guys on the spot here. Knowing what you guys know and seeing what you've seen, what are your draft grades for the Cincinnati Bengals for the 2023 NFL Draft?
Mike, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first if you guys don't want.
Here, you go first, Mohammad.
Solid B. I'll give him a solid B. I don't know. I don't really lean B plus or B minus. I just think it's right down the middle. And like right down the middle is kind of the adjective I'd give them for this. Obviously, I think Myles Murphy was, one of those big swings you want to make. They made the swing and they didn't miss. And I really like DJ Turner. Jordan Battle, I just, and we talked about this a lot on our last podcast. For those who missed it, make sure you go and listen to it. I don't know how I feel about that. As a player, love the value. The pick I'm torn on because I think you could have done a lot with that beyond safety. I think safety is a position you could have gotten later in the draft, or Mike made a point many times on this pod. You could have gotten that in free agency like they did with the one kid from Tulane. I forget his name, but he's an undrafted free agent. I saw Tom Pelissero said they got. Charlie Jones, great pick. Chase Brown, for what they got in the 5th round, it was a great pick. Although, obviously, you could say they passed on Rashawn Johnson by getting Jordan Battle. But with what they got, I think Brown was fine. Brad Robbins, bold pick. And, I mean, the DJ Ivy pick doesn't really swing me one way or the other. I'm neutral on that. I mean, like most 7th-round picks. But, yeah, it's the Battle pick for me, and then what they could have missed out on that, what they missed out on because of that. I like Andre Yoshivas. I like the athleticism. I like his score. I like his 40-yard dash time. The fact that he's played multiple sports, but we don't know what we're going to get out of him. At this point, we got to see how well he can learn to run routes. But with that, in short, I would say that's why I give them a B. But I think it's a well-deserved B. If that makes sense. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've been kind of torn. I don't want to say the same as you. I'm kind of torn between a B. I can go either way. So I think a B is probably fair. I actually really liked the Myles Murphy pick. I think that you can probably, talk yourself into an A there. I think that was really good. Came at a position of need where you get a player who was probably, not many people expected to be there at 28. DJ Turner, you draft a guy who is, a position of high value and high leverage. And you draft a guy who, he might be a starter next year if Cheeto departs. So Jordan Battle, I think, I'm feeling better about that pick, for the Bengals, the more that, people kind of talk about it. It kind of, when you talk to, Darren Simmons today, yeah, they want him on special teams immediately. But it kind of sounds like he might have an outside shot at a starting job. So, I think, the more I think about Battle, the more I think I kind of like that pick. Charlie Jones and Iashivas, I don't know. I think you needed another slot, which is why I like the Charlie Jones pick. I was talking with one of the other media members today, and I just kind of, we were kind of just shooting the shit, and we were like, hey, look, they need a guy who can play in the slot, and they need a guy who can run routes. I wish they would have done more at running back. I think, you look at kind of where they're at right now with Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, Trevion Williams, Chris Evans. I don't think that's good enough. I wouldn't have drafted a punter. The DJ Abbey thing, it's just hard to say. There's not a ton of info out there about that guy. So, I think, I would give them a plus for kind of drafting defense. I think they needed some defensive help. They drafted players with positional values that are really high. But you also need help at running back still. I'm okay with not drafting a tackle. I'm okay with them not drafting a tight end. The punter pick brings him down a notch, and then not doing enough at running back brings him down a notch as well.
So what were you torn from? You said you were torn.
You said a B, and you didn't say what the other one was.
I'll say a B. Like, I was stuck with like a B minus because the punter thing really. Like, I think you could have.
You just don't like punters. I don't know what you have against them.
No, I think you could find a punter anywhere. And
really? Okay.
I just don't know.
Okay.
I'm just not the punter thing. Because again, if we're talking about the running back room with Chase Brown, Dwayne McBride, Joe Mixon, Trevion Williams, you probably granted it's a 7th round pick, but you probably feel better about that. Or if you picked Kuntz, like. Again, I know I said they don't need a tight end. You're probably feeling better about that. So I don't know. It's just if they had picked I don't know. I'm trying to think of another position if they had picked another defensive end instead of a punter, I think that would have been fine. The punter thing, I'm not sold on. And maybe he'll be great, but I'm just not sold on it.
I hope Evan McPherson's not listening to this podcast.
My thoughts on it, I think they got A in talent. Like, I don't have any problem with most of the picks in terms of the players they drafted at the spot they drafted. My problem is what I feel like is a C minus in fit, especially for next year. And I've harped on this throughout the process that I felt that they really should try to get over the top. And they got a lot of guys that I feel like in 2-3 years will make them look smart. I don't know necessarily, like, is Brad Robbins going to get the second most playing time out of this rookie class? And it's possible.
If Brad Robbins Brad Robbins is going to be the starter. So
he's the number 2 guy, and he's the punter that Andrew wants to throw, off a cliff. And so it's, that's not ideal. And I think he could help this team. That's not saying that, but I think you want somebody to make more of an impact for a team that's a Super Bowl contender. So I gave it like a C plus, kind of as like coming halfway between the two. Because like I said, I don't really have a problem other than the Princeton kid, where I think there's some question marks talent wise. They did well at where they were drafting for who they got. But in terms of who helps this roster next year, and I know the coaching staff's like, well, we got to be deep at every position. Sure, but I mean, you could have free agency could have easily, 2 more signees, you would have been in the same spot at some of these places. So I don't know. I didn't think they helped themselves enough for next year, but long term, obviously, they set themselves up at some of these places.
I really like what Mike said, like how he said A. Did you say A or A plus for talent? A or A plus?
A.
Like you said, A for talent, and then C minus based on like the picks. Like, I mean, my overall grade was a B, which is like an average of those two, the A and the C minus. Like, so I'm pretty much in the same ballpark as Mike. I know Andrew's not too far off, except like we said, I guess, me and Mike just can't understand why. He has something against drafting kickers and punters. Like I said, I hope Evan McPherson, Brad Robbins, I hope you guys aren't listening to this podcast because, we don't claim Andrew. Just kidding. We're all a team. We're all a team. Even when we agree to disagree, we're all a team. But no, I mean, I think we're all kind of on the same page there. I like what Andrew said. Yeah, I mean, with the tight end, I still want to see what they would have done if they didn't get Battle, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Like I said, if they got Mitch Wilcox as an undrafted free agent, they could get like the second reiteration of him in this year's college free agent class. Yeah, I think with the linemen, you can live with that. I saw they got one kid from Washington, undrafted, granted. This was like right before we got on the podcast. Jackson Kirkland, who I think, according to PFF, allowed 0 sacks on 491 pass block snaps, Doesn't mean he's going to be a starter, but if you really think he can make the team and be a backup to Alex Kappa and Cordell Vosen, why not? Practice squad, why not? But yeah, I think we can live with that. Obviously, they're pretty bloated at right tackle, and they got Orlando Brown, so I think they're in pretty good shape there. But yeah, I think that. Oh, I forgot. I just realized there's one guy they didn't get. Backup quarterback. Mike, I know you're big on that. I know you think they needed to get a backup quarterback either in the draft or in free agency. Brandon Allen is still out there. I don't know if they go after him, but like, what do you think the Bengals do? Do they just wait for Brandon Allen to come back? Do you think one of the college guys that went undrafted tries out, or do you think they just stick with Jake Browning?
But my original point was that I was surprised that they're going to go into next year without a veteran that's played a game. So I thought they'd address a need because they have a numbers need to have a quarterback. They didn't. So I've just been surprised all offseason that, Jake Browning looks like the backup. Obviously your season's going to go off the rails if Joe Burrow's hurt. But this roster is talented enough to try to, at least make the playoffs. And I don't know, you could do that without somebody that's, taken snaps in the NFL before. So that was my surprise. A rookie wouldn't solve that, but at least it would have made sense why they didn't re-sign Brandon Allen, but they didn't. So, Zach mentioned Brandon Allen's name tonight, so obviously he's still, maybe a possibility to bring in for depth, but we'll see where that goes.
Speaking of which, technically you could say Eli Apple and Trey Flowers are still out there, but I think this draft essentially confirms they're not coming back. Because, if you draft two corners with two veterans leaving, I think you pretty much know the answer to, is there a chance with Eli Apple and Trey Flowers coming back? Simple answer is no, not a chance. Brandon Allen is different. It's funny, we talked about when we did our mock drafts, I think the guy we kept mocking was Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the 6th round. I was amazed. He actually went, I think in the 4th round, right? And it was the Browns that took him to be behind Deshaun Watson. So, I don't know. That was an interesting pick. I want to talk to our Orange and Brown Talk people about that off the mic later, because I was intrigued by that. But yeah, we'll see if they get a Brandon Allen back, they get an undrafted kid, or if they just say Jake Browning, and you we trust, behind Joe Burrow, that is. Thank you for staying with us all throughout the week as we previewed and brought you everything you needed to know on the draft. If you want to read more about the Bengals picks, who they are, why they're important, and why they matter, go to cleveland.com/Bengals. Me, Mike, and Andrew have everything you need to know. We've got lots of stories coming. There is a lot on these guys, more than you might know. So tune in with our coverage and sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter, like I mentioned earlier, at cleveland.com/newsletter. But that puts a bow on draft weekend. We will be off the next 2 days, but we will see you on Tuesday to resume things from here. Once again, for myself, Andrew, and Mike, I'm Mohammad Ahmad. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.